So we just previously defined the ecosystem as the interaction between living and non-living things in a particular area. But when we talk about interactions, what are we really speaking to? Well, this is a dynamic process. There's a constant give and take. And so when we start to think about these dynamics, we really focus on two main things. The first is the recycling of chemical nutrients. There's a finite amount of resources on the planet, so how can we exchange materials? And that exchange of materials often is between living things, but also non-living things like the soil play a really important role. And then the flow of energy. We're going to talk about the flow of energy in the next slide as being a one-way flow of energy, with the sun being at the center of that. And so when you look within an ecosystem, we're going to have the ability to recycle nutrients as the energy flows through. Here's a nice picture of what I'm talking about. Let's start with energy here. So we know that the sun is an extremely important source of light energy. And it turns out there are special organisms called producers which can harness this light energy and turn it into the chemical energy of food. So for example, plants would be a great example. Algae, bacteria are two others which can carry out photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the use of carbon dioxide and light to make important food molecules like sugars. So now if we look at the flow of energy, we can see there are consumers which exist like animals that require producers to sustain themselves. So for example, as this sheep grazes, it's getting its nutrients, the substance it needs to survive, from the photosynthetic producer. Now as the sheep carries out its metabolism, as it harnesses the energy of food, it gives off excess energy as heat, and that heat gets returned to the environment. So we can see what we mean here by flow through. That energy is beginning with the sun, flowing through both producers and consumers, resulting in the outflow of heat energy. Now, nutrients are a bit different. Nutrients work in a cycle. So we talked about the fact that producers are able to harness light energy in the chemical energy of their food. Now, as animals consume that, animals sustain themselves, and then through the organic defecation process, by which they return nutrients to the ground, and or when animals die, their carcasses return nutrients to the soil. And within that soil, you have organisms called decomposers. Examples would be fungi and bacteria. Those bacteria and fungi break down those nutrients into usable parts now for those producers to take up and use for themselves. And that's what we mean by the cycling of nutrients. We can see that as the animal dies, it doesn't take those nutrients with it. The non-living soil actually becomes an important part based on the inhabitants called decomposers.